Today I was asked to come and just brief on Captain Joseph House, to leave a flyer with you. We have our annual, it's our 4th annual. It's a card on the tables. We still have room to attend. It's a really special event held out at Sunland Golf Course this year. And all I can say is the house is moving along. We have electricians in there on a daily basis. The rough-in for the plumbing has been done. Our insulating company that will be doing that is lined up and ready to go. So we keep moving forward. 10,000 hours of many of you I know who have been at the house. Our general contractor, thank you, Bill Feely, who has been guiding us through this process of remodeling the old 1910 house to ready it for Captain Joseph House, welcoming the Gold Star families who will come. I invite you to attend us. If any of you are in businesses or individuals who would like to make a donation to go on our auction table, I can still take till tomorrow before we go to print, so if something comes up to add to that, that would be great. There's, as I say, invitations, and when you make your decisions and choices to where you're going to go in the next couple of weeks, in this case, the 23rd, please choose Captain Joseph House, serving the Gold Star families. They are the ones that protect our freedom. They have given their lives so that makes it possible for all of us to live in this most beautiful park and to do the jobs and the activities and the lives that we live. So consider them as an opportunity to come and support Captain Joseph House. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you.
All right.
Good morning. We're positively Port Angeles. I'm always looking for positive ways to promote our community, and I doodled something and I kind of liked it. I took it down the printers, and I have a new design for a bumper sticker. We love our beautiful Port Angeles. It has the heart, and the capital A in Angeles is a beautiful tree. So it just says, not I, like I love New York, we love our beautiful Port Angeles. Costs $1 to print it, so we're asking for a donation for $1. We want just to spread positive throughout Port Angeles. So everybody's getting them, and the PDN will be running ads for them. We're getting them out at cost. They're fun, they're positive. Let's send a positive message. We love our beautiful Port Angeles. So I brought some, have some available if you want to see me afterwards. Thank you.
Buy the first one.
Thank you.
Asked me this morning to say a few words about the fire over on the bluff, and I have to qualify this very specifically, and that was a city fire, and I'm the county fire district, so I really should ask Chief Dubuque to give you some specifics. I think he'd be a great presenter on that here. But they did call us for mutual aid to come over and help them. It was unfortunate that fire started. Actually, some neighbors saw the smoke up around the attic and in the eaves and whatnot, and law enforcement got there first, and they confirmed that there was an active fire in the building, and when the firefighters got there, they found out that it wasn't up top, that it had actually started down below.
Was it the stove or something?
That's undetermined at this point. Apparently the homeowner had said that they had had a wood stove fire going earlier in the day. The official line that I heard Chief Dubuque mention was that it's probably going to be undetermined because of the extended damage. I think that the key point here is that fire safety is everybody's responsibility, and to have those working smoke alarms in homes, over 40% of most smoke alarms in homes don't work, and they are truly lifesavers. So, number one, make sure you have a working smoke alarm in your home, and always be practicing fire safety. The issue with the bluff erosion there, I think it was a good call by Port Angeles Fire to close off the Discovery Trail and evacuate the buildings on each side of that burning home and try to control it in that fashion rather than risk additional lives of either first responders or other citizens. And it's unfortunate that they had to make that decision, perhaps at the sake of someone's property, but life safety is always number one. And then we start with the worst case scenario and work towards the best case scenario, and they were saving lives first and then working toward property conservation second. I'd be happy to field any questions, but again, it would have to be a qualified answer because it really wasn't our fire. I did show up at the scene, I reported to the incident commander. He said he had it, and he had a good plan, so he didn't need any additional help. Thank you.
Oops, we have a question. Let's come on up. The General Manager of Lake Crescent Lodge.
Thank you. Actually, the new member back here, we go back to 1979. I worked with Bruce on the Fiesta Bowl Committee for 5 years and was pleasantly surprised when I moved here that he was back home. So again, congratulations, Bruce. Just a little bit. John asked me for a couple things. One is to talk a little bit about the history of Lake Crescent Lodge and again, just the impact of tourism on the area. I think a lot of you know probably as much history or more than even I do, but I'll share you some of the tidbits that I've learned. One of the things, and again, it's the lodge is operated by Aramark, who has a concessionaire for the National Park Service. I'm going into my second year. I've been in the hotel business for 42 years. I started before child labor laws. But I spent 19 years with Westin Hotels. Started out, graduated from Michigan State's Hotel School of Hospitality Business to St. Francis in San Francisco. Spent 19 years with Westin Hotels. Was at the Arizona Biltmore when I met Bruce. I've worked in 3 different islands in the Caribbean and was Vice President of Hotel Operations at Caesars in Lake Tahoe, and also was Vice President and General Manager of Boca Raton Resort Club down in Florida. So a pretty extensive background. I reached the age of 50 and I decided I didn't want to wear a coat and tie anymore, work, and started doing boutique hotels around the North America. Had the opportunity of coming and working at Lake Crescent, and I think the thing that really excited me at the time, it was for its 100th anniversary. Last year was the 100th anniversary of Lake Crescent Lodge. It was the best year in the history financially for the property. And again, continuing that stewardship along with the National Park Service for the next 100 years. I think that's one of the keys of having worked now at the property and working with National Park Service. They're involved in the entire process. They want to make sure that it continues on for future generations that can have the same experience and feel. You know, when you go and dine at the restaurant, and you know the restaurant is ranked through TripAdvisor as the #1 restaurant out of the 300 restaurants in the Olympic Peninsula. But the park is very involved even with the menu. They want to make sure it's a menu that still carries a little bit of the feel and flavor of the historical aspect of the lodge. You're not going to see cutting-edge cuisine at Lake Crescent Lodge. That's not the intent that the park wants, and you know, we basically take a look at even the foods that we do it in a very well-done manner. We're opening this year on April 29th, and the earliest we've ever opened, and the main reason is because of where Mother's Day falls. Last year we had about 10% of our staff return. This year we're up to about 18%, but still that's almost 80% of the staff is brand new every year. We're trying to hire more and more local people and stretching out, but this year with Mother's Day, with where it falls, we would, if we open as the historical time frame around that 1st of May, we would have been open for 3 days and then had Mother's Day. Mother's Day last year we did 350 people for brunch, and we followed up with 150 people for dinners. That's 500 covers out of the restaurant. And with all the holidays, that's also a similar pattern. Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, all the major events, and it was really interesting because especially as we got into the holiday time frame, I would start seeing guests from Forks or Swim that hit every single holiday event we had, and they said, it's just, we've loved it, it's a tradition, and you'll see us next year as well. But again, if you take a look at Aramark and what they're involved in relationship to the Olympic Peninsula, they operate Hurricane Ridge. They operate Log Cabin Resort, Lake Crescent, Fairholme Store, which is on the west end of the lake, next to the campground, Soul Duck Hot Springs Resort, as well as Lake Quinault. So actually it's one of the larger employers in the Olympic Peninsula with all those properties, and again, really trying to promote and bring people into the community. A little bit on history of the lodge. As I mentioned, last year was our 100th anniversary. It was built by Avery and Julia Singer, and it was opened as Singer Tavern. It started out with the 8 lodge rooms, which are upstairs, that we still rent out. And I always refer to them now as a McMenamin-style guest room, with the sink in the room and the bathroom down the hall. And then it had a few cottages. Up until 1922, people used to arrive to the lodge by ferry. They used to come across the lake by boat. And it wasn't until 1922 that the Olympic Highway was actually opened and people could actually drive to the property. The Singers sold the property in 1927 to the Seattle Trust, and then it was purchased by Walter and Bessie Bovee. And again, there's the Bovee Meadow, which is very close to the lodge, and that's actually named after them. And then a lot of people remember, I don't know if anybody was around in 1937, on September 30th, Franklin Delano Roosevelt came and visited the area. He came to the lodge and stayed overnight, but while he was there, he also held a conference with the National Park and National Forest representatives and the Washington senators and local business leaders to determine if the Olympic National Forest at the time should become a national park. After the next day, he went down to Lake Quinault, and I know they promoted very well. He went there for lunch. He actually stayed with us. But again, following the tour, President Roosevelt signed authorization for the creation of the Olympic National Park in 1938. In 1940, at the Sun Porch, which is the favorite dining location for everybody, that was actually the time frame that the Sun Porch was actually added on to the lodge. And then some additional cabins were also built at that time. In 1951, the National Park Service bought the lodge and all of its property for $95,000. Wow. And now, even now, the main lodge, the Roosevelt cabins, and the main grounds are all on the National Register of Historic Places. And that has an intent because anytime we want to touch or do anything with the buildings, it has to be reviewed and approved by the park. And again, it's as an overseer of the facilities, and again, they are very, very concerned on, again, continuing that experience for guests for the next 100 years as well and future. We currently have 55 lodging units. After about the 15th of May, we basically will run at 100% occupancy until October 15th. There's some days we may have as many as 40 rooms departing, but we also have 40 rooms arriving, so it can make it a little bit hectic. The restaurant seats 97 people. As I mentioned earlier, last year was the 100th anniversary of the lodge, and again, on the voting for USA Today for Underground, it's great to see it. I think it finished in the top 10. I know I voted a number of times. But last year, Lake Crescent Lodge was recognized. They did a poll of the top 10 of the national park lodges in the United States. And Lake Crescent Lodge finished number 5. And you know, I think, again, just like it's when the voting was happening for the Underground, and again, when you take a look at some of the things they were competing against, there's some pretty major features and locations around some major cities. To be recognized, even in the top 10, is so significant, and to be mentioned, the publicity that it brings, and again, just it helps promote tourism for the area. So it was great to see that, and I was a proud supporter of that as well. One of the things that's happening this year, and you've probably already seen some of the promotions, is that the National Park System this year is celebrating its centennial or 100th anniversary. The National Park System started in 1916, so there's a lot of events and publicity and promotional things that are being done this year by the national parks. You're starting to see some TV advertisements. They're starting to do some specials on TV in relationships to the national parks, and actually the first one that was done on the Olympic National Park, and hopefully you had an opportunity to see that. But there are also a couple of different programs they're promoting. One is Find Your Park and Find Your Adventure. again, it's truly unique in relationship to the national parks throughout the country and locations where they are. Really some most spectacular areas in the United States that are highlighted in that. The other thing that they're also doing is they're unveiling, the U.S. Postal Service is unveiling a series of postage stamps highlighting national parks. They're doing them periodically here with the next period of time. Hopefully they're going to have one for the Olympic National Park, and they're going to be one of the, regular, what do they call it, even when they change the rates, it's still on the stamps. So those will be coming up, forever stamps, right? And then also, National Park Week is coming up. It'll actually be from April 16th to the 24th. So again, a lot of publicity, and I think the one thing that also does for the local community, it just helps the awareness in promoting and getting people to come and experience the parks. I'm a resident here of Port Angeles. This is my second year and going into my second season. And you can definitely feel it in town when most of the parks, or the park areas, and a lot of the other impact as we close for the winter months on the local community. You see it in the shops, you see it in the restaurants, and again, trying to get out and support the people, especially during the downtimes, to keep people employed and keep people active. And by shopping downtown, by going to the local restaurants, it does have an impact. One of the little things I'll just point out, I think a lot of you have seen the elk over the fireplace. And just a little bit of background on that, it's a 17-point trophy, and if you look on the plaque on it, it says near record. And I could never figure out what that was. And actually, one of the retired biologists from the park was here this past year and had a chance to speak with him. And he explained to me that the elk's head was actually shot by Chris Morgenroth back in 1902, and he presented it to the singers in 1915 when it opened, and it was placed over the fireplace, and it just is this grand spot in the lodge when you walk in. They did some restoration work on it a number of years back, and actually they found that the skull on the elk was cracked. And due to that, it couldn't be claimed. It actually is a record elk. It is the record elk. It would have been the largest one in regards to ever being shot. If it was shot with the cracked skull, they couldn't guarantee that it had been shot, that it may have died of natural causes. And for that reason, that's why you see on that plaque it says near record, which is kind of unique. And again, Chris Morgenroth, the individual that shot it and donated it to the singers, really a fascinating man. I know the family is still here. I met one of his daughters who this past year when we opened, and she had been a hostess in the dining room back in the 40s. But he's got a book that's just fascinating to read, and I'm a big reader. I try to read as much as possible. And so a lot of times I'm talking to guests in the lobby. They say, God, did you grow up and were you born and raised here? And I said, no, I've been here about a year. But some of the things, and actually Chris Morgenroth wrote a book called Footprints in the Olympics. And it's a fascinating book. If you haven't had a chance, I'm sure they probably have it at the library, or I picked it up through Amazon.com. But it's fascinating to learn about somebody that immigrated here to the United States from Germany back when he was 14 years old. Came across the country and happened to settle here, and was one of the first settlers of the Olympic Peninsula. And just his background and the things that he did at that point in time, and some of the history on it as a biography, is fascinating reading. So if you ever have a chance, it'd be a great opportunity to learn some of that, and it was just a great read. So I think again is just an overview of tourism. Last year was a very strong year, and I think again with the promotion of the Olympic Park as the 100th anniversary for the park system, I think this year is even going to be better. Our initial bookings are up substantially, and again, the one thing that does, when we look at advanced bookings for Lake Crescent Lodge, the impact that it has on us is, one, we're at a much higher pace of selling out, which means there's going to be more activity. And like I said, we were sold out last year. So what starts happening is when people start calling looking for rooms, okay? And we're full, and we're going to be full much earlier than last year, that business trickles down. It gets, here at Olympic Lodge, it gets Red Lion, it gets some of the smaller B&Bs, some of the other locations. And, more people, more traffic is good for business, okay? And so again, I think from our indications and what we see so far, it is going to be a very, very strong year for 2016. So that's pretty much my presentation, but if anybody has any questions, then I think I'd be happy to answer. Yes?
It was mentioned earlier that Lake Crescent, the area of 101 here, the part of 101 around Lake Crescent is going to be closed to some extent or another for repairs in 2017. Has Lake Crescent Lodge come up with some contingency plans to deal with that?
Yeah, we were in the first series of meetings. We were very actively involved with that, and we had some initial discussions when it was first being presented by the National Park System. One thing is they were talking about some different options, and hopefully what will continue, what was decided, what came out of the meetings last year, is that they wouldn't shut the whole road down, and that was one of the options. Basically just shut it down for a period of time and get all the work done. Well, as you know, unfortunately, the only time they can do work on roads is during tourist season. And from a number of meetings, what basically came out with is they would do a series of continuing to have at least one lane open, and they would basically be closing down one lane at a time, letting traffic through, and extending it back, unless there was real extensive areas. But one of the problems that they've encountered when they were taking a look at it is a lot of those guardrails along the lake are just rotted out. And they're rusty, and the wood has just been eaten alive. So there's some real dangerous situations if a car does hit the guardrail. It won't hold, as well as making sure that the road surface stays. So again, it's important to participate in those meetings, and I think from a standpoint both from Port Angeles, basically all the way to Forks, it's important for the livelihood of the economy that stay open and people can traverse around the lake during that time. Yes.
So this might not be your question, but I'll try it. We live in town here, and last year we decided during summer sometime to go up the Cove River. And we got in a line, and we waited for probably 45 minutes. We weren't even close to getting in the park, so we just turned around. Quick.
A line where?
A traffic line getting in the park.
Right.
And so what I'm wondering is maybe the park, how are they dealing with this increased use that you're seeing in terms of a nice experience for people who come?
Well, I can just kind of take a look at even experiencing this winter, because on my days off, I would actually be up at Hurricane Ridge and working Hurricane Ridge, and kind of that same situation. Is the road open? Is the road closed? And even though we were the concessionaires, we would have to get in line with the line, and people would be dying to have their first cup of coffee. And there was a couple times we had about 100 cars waiting in front of us even to get up there. I think the one thing is that they've done at some of the other parks, and I don't know if they'll consider this at some point in time, is try to limit the number of cars. You see it now at Yosemite, you see it at Yellowstone, where they have people, they park, they get them on buses, and you experience it by buses. And I think that's at some point in time they may have to take a look at that, because again, with the levels coming up, and again, usually there's a capacity in some of those areas like the river rainforest of getting into it. It can hold so many people. That doesn't change, but again, you can cut down on the traffic and the carbon footprint that it also provides at the same time. Yes?
Various times in the past when we were looking at commenting on park policies, we found there's a tension between maximum public use and other park policies that would conflict with that. And I was wondering to what extent and what instances you have seen, given the control the park had over your property, where you cannot do what you would do if you were just running it as a business, maximizing public use, maximizing revenues, possibly expanding it if you have more customers than you can handle during the summer? Where are there limits or tensions with park policy that would modify what you would just do if you're running it as a hotel?
Honestly, I just had one that just happened this last week. And again, is we have to send in a review. We send our menus in. Okay, there are various items that, because of the contract, that have to be included in on the menu. They had 1 year where it got a little bit, they weren't happy with it. That's one of the things that they told me about when I first came, is that there are certain expectations that they look at for the type of food. The one that I just had this last week was the sun porch. Okay, the sun porch, you know, again, was a nice addition when it was added. Okay, it's when people come to dine, it's the #1 area that's requested of where they want to eat. Okay, now the sun porch. Okay, last year we kind of split it half and half. We had half the area set up as like an extension of the dining room. And another half that was set up more for, you know, where you could basically just have a cocktail, you could sit, you could play a game. The park came back this year and told us that, you know what, we did not like the aspect of having the sun porch split in half. And they wanted it to have to go back to being entirely set up, okay, with the rattan furniture, the low cocktail tables. Now again, people can still eat there, okay? But it doesn't have the feel and the flavor of the historical aspect of what it was initially designed for. But when you do have special occasions, like we started doing wine dinners this year. We're having a series of wine dinners this year. Or we'll have some small, actually the hospital had some people who came out for a birthday. And we've used that for a dining area. Now we can use it and set it up for that night. But then after the function is over, we have to set it back up. And, you know, from a standpoint, and what I tried to explain is one that is the most expensive, or not expensive, an area that's most requested. And two, it actually makes it quite difficult when you've got a group of 4 people trying to have a nice lunch or a nice dinner, and you're sitting at chairs and you're at a cocktail table, and we're setting up, you know, putting the food out there. We have to set all the condiments, and it takes a lot of extra time and effort, and it's not as pleasant a dining experience, and that's what it's really used for. But we have to set that up that way.
I mean, if you, let's say you wanted to expand the sun porch because of the request you get, I mean, that's the first place where I take out-of-town visitors. So when we go for a hike along the Crescent, I try to get a table at the sun porch, a brunch or lunch there. If you want to expand that, would that be something possible, or would the national park say, well, no, you can't do any additions?
I think it would become almost impossible just because the being listed on the Registry of Historic Places. Okay. Anything we touch, I mean, if we're painting, paint color has to be approved, or it has to be approved by the park. And then, you know, so some of that is quite extensive, much different than, I'll give you an example. When I worked at the Arizona Biltmore, it was Bruce basically rebuilt the Arizona Biltmore over a 5-year period. There I used to meet with Mrs. Frank Lloyd Wright and John Redbury, who was the chief architect at Taliesin West. They would approve everything. Well, it's kind of very similar, but you know, again, with the park, they're very concerned, and again, it's that stewardship. It's nothing in regards to, you know, trying to stifle business, but again, it's trying to ensure that there is an intent, okay? Another example is the, in front of the, this is before my time, but before, right in front of the fireplace, there's those large, now those tan leather couches. Very nice, very comfortable. They're the first seats that are taken every morning. It's the only spot in the park or at the lodge that you can get Wi-Fi. So a lot of people use it. It's the first place people sit. Well, they're still kind of upset because the park never approved those. And if you've ever sat way on the far side and remember the furniture that used to be there, it was the old, older with, not the only thing that people say, well, yeah, I remember sitting there because of the springs in my rear end. They weren't the most comfortable. But again, it's that historical flavor and feel. So, you know, again, it's Even running it as a business, yes, there's certain things we'd like to do, but you can also see from the standpoint of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. And, decisions that we try to make, try to again feel or follow through with that receivership and stewardship in relationship to the process. Thank you. Yes.
How do we go about petitioning you and Aramark to hire more than 18% of local people? I've fought it for years, I've written my letters, but I find out in a time when economically we need jobs here, that you bring people from Tennessee, Kansas, they know nothing.
Yeah. I will tell you, this is what I do. This is my second season.
Stay in front of the mic.
Sorry. This is my second season, and basically what I do, once we close in January, until we reopen, is hiring staff, okay? We post jobs, okay? The jobs are posted. And again, I am trying to hire as many local people as possible, okay? From standpoints of our servers, about 85% of our servers are all locals. And that's one of the few areas we have people that do come back. Our chef will be here for his second year. He's a resident, okay, of Port Angeles. But again, there are jobs that are posted. We still have openings because what happens, we open up at the end of April, but business really starts picking up. It actually peaks when school is out, okay? So that's about the middle of June. So we ramp up as we get to that point in time. So we still have a number of openings. And if you do know people that are interested, have them apply. Yep.
Do you post your job openings at Peninsula College?
Yes, and we're actually starting an internship program with them, which we've never done in the past. And, with Doc, he's been a firm supporter, and one of the things that I've told him is anything that we can do, because they've started a hospitality program. The hospitality program is actually being taught by one of our employees, our guest services manager. So it gives us an excellent opportunity, again, to help assist in that program of giving, openings and positions for people as they start that program. And probably the other thing too is the job source. We've gone down there twice now and interviewed. In fact, I just hired somebody yesterday that's going to be working out at Fair Home Store that we interviewed one of those. So again, I'm a firm believer of hiring local people. We do have housing, okay? But again, instead of having 2 or 3 people that we've had in the past, I'd like to see where we get down to 1 person per unit, and then 2 people sharing a bathroom instead of 4 to 6. Now you do have some people that they live in a location and they go from park to park. They're seasonal workers, and actually some of them are very, very good. Our activities director is somebody that's local that we hired. And so a number of positions that historically have been from outside, we're really trying to focus on hiring locals. And again, like I said, have people apply because we still have openings.
Thank you very much.
Well, normally I would move to extend the meeting, but we have an 8:30 government affairs, so I think, John, we should probably wrap this up. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you all.
I will be
Appreciate it.
around for a while.